Hello everybody. I just hit the live button, so we should be up and running here in a minute. Alright, I had a little bit of tech to figure out because for some reason the YouTube chat wasn't working again. So I've got to figure out if there's something going wrong on my end that's creating that problem, or if there's something about YouTube. I am not sure. I have got a workaround in though, so I can see the chat. And as we're getting started and giving people some time to join, I will say a few of the businessy things as we get started. Welcome to Crafty Soup. My name is Misty. If you're brand new here and just finding me, you won't be able to leave a comment unless you're a subscriber for at least 20 minutes. And I have that rule in place just to keep out any trolls because I'm the only one moderating the comments and it is hard for me to create and moderate at the same time. With that being said, this is my once a month live stream called Advent All Year, and that is where we are using the Spellbinders Crafty Advent Calendar, and I just got a new graphic up. So there is our calendar, and this came out in December of 2025, and it's got 24 little doors that you open for Advent, and behind each door is some kind of crafty goodie, generally die sets, although there are some embellishments and stamps and stencils. So I use this set all year for 2026 to create new projects that may not have been intended from the products included in this set. So for instance, if we have a dog die that has cute little ears, I have ideas of using those ears for other critters, or I've got an idea coming up to turn them into an airplane. So that is the kind of crazy thinking you'll find here in my Advent All Year series. So we've given it a few minutes for people to pop in. I just had my screen go dark on me. Let's see if I can get it back up. Okay. That was unexpected. All right, I am back up and I'm going to go ahead and get started. Today's project isn't too complicated, so we should fit within the general hour that I allot for this, although I do give myself a half-hour buffer in case things are taking longer. But today I think we will make it in that hour time frame. So I am going to, let's shut the box off and switch to the desk view. All right, this is a craft along, and I do prepare instructions for you to prep any pieces in case you want to craft along with me. I'm finding that people generally like to watch first and craft later, and that is perfectly okay, but those instructions are available on my blog, and I don't have the graphic for that yet, but it is craftysoup.com. And you can find the instructions there. I do leave them in the comments of my YouTube channel as well. If you are in the community tab, you can find them there. And I try to post them on Instagram, but not always stellar with that one. So if you want to craft along, you can find those. All right, here is the project we are working on today. Now, like I said in the intro, I might do something really odd, like take puppy ears and turn them into an airplane propeller. However, today isn't quite that much of a stretch. We are going to be taking a fishbowl die and turning it into flowers. This is a piece from the Alien spaceship, and we're turning that into flowers. And with this particular project, I wanted to go big and bold, and as I was designing big and bold, I thought it looked rather alien, so I went ahead and added the spaceship from the Advent calendar as is. This is how the die came. Now this little antenna piece sticking up is this piece right here, which goes behind our spaceship. So you can see how I can repurpose pieces into other ideas. So let's go ahead and dive in and look at some of these pieces that I have. All right, I have pre-cut and done my homework, so I've got a card base, and this is not a card size I do very often at all, but with the big bold flowers, I wanted a big bold card. So this is just a regular 8.5 by 11 letter size sheet folded in half, and then I've got my matte layer that is cut to 5 by 8. I did do a whole bunch of die cutting ahead of time. This one is the stem from the worm die set, and as you can see, I try to be as what is the word? I try to save as much space on my paper when I'm die cutting, so I find a way to squish everything together as I'm working to save paper. So we did have a lot of die cutting of those, a lot of flower buds, a lot of these ginormous leaf, which we are going to turn into a bit of a jungle scene down here. We have the telephone cord from the telephone die, which we will be turning into more vines for our jungle. And if you missed the previous Advent All Year episode where we turned the telephone cord into curly hair for a little princess fairy figure, those are more ideas. Let's see, what else have we got here? So here was the fishbowl insert that we're going to be using to create our jumbo flower. These little stamen on our flower is actually a little foot set from a dancing toast image that came in the kit. And then we just have some other bits and pieces here. I do need a couple of scraps because we are going to back the window of our UFO with whatever colors you want, but I used the lighter teal that I backed my flower with, and then the yellow and the red to kind of make it cohesive. So let's go ahead and start with our flower building, and then the rest of it after that is pretty much just gluing. So I'm going to set these pieces off to the side, and I did die cut 2 of these flowers or 2 of these fish bowls, and I'm going to create a dimensional flower. Now this one, I had some stuff stuck in my die, so it didn't cut all the way through. But what I'm going to do with these is turn this one upside down and tuck it behind this flower, and that's going to create this layer that we're going to add some foam to, add our stamens to, and create that dimension. Before we glue that together, however, I do want to back these little polka dots here with this bigger piece of the light teal color, just to give it some more texture and some differentiation between the pieces. So I have got my favorite glue press here, and I'm going to actually glue from this side because I know exactly where those holes are, and that will allow me to line up my piece on the inside and make sure I've got the glue in the right place. I did save another small tiny piece of this for when we get to our UFO, so I've got another piece of that there. Alright, I'm going to grab my foam adhesive, set this off to the side. I am using a square. These are 1/2-inch squares. I'm going to put it right in the middle, and that's going to allow me to add a bead of glue so that the base of the flower will be flat, but the foam dot will allow just a little bit of texture to hole up in there, and that will give us some space to be able to glue the rest of our pieces down. And in fact, I'm going to go ahead and do that before I glue everything together, because when I prepped the project, gluing them after the fact was a little more difficult. So I'm taking my 3 little dancing feet pieces, and I'm going to go ahead and cut them in half because I want my stamen, as you can see here, to each go in their own direction. So I'm going to have 3 aiming this way and 3 aiming this way. So I want to cut these apart and get them to aim in the right directions. If you are just joining me and finding me, I want to repeat that if you are brand new here, you can't leave a comment over in the comment box unless you're a subscriber for at least 20 minutes. So if you're going to stick around, go ahead and hit subscribe. That way you can chat with me. And if you don't want to stay subscribed, you don't have to. You can just unsubscribe when you're done if this isn't your jam, which is totally okay. There's lots of things out there on the internet for you to find your jam. But if you do want to join me, go ahead and hit subscribe and we can chat a little bit along the way. All right, I have got my flower going on there. I'm going to make sure my feet, well, what I'm now creating as stamen are aiming in the direction I want them to aim. And there we go, that should do it. So I'm just going to put a generous bead of glue along the center of my flower so that I can aim these. Now, all of these, oops, do I have something upside down? That one is aiming. This one is upside down. There we go. Speaking of upside down, all of these are currently right side up, but since my flower is upside down, I do want to flip these over as I glue them so that the nice, pretty side of the die cut is facing the front of the project. If you are a die cutter, then you know that one side of the die often has texture and messiness to it from the roughness of the die cutting plates, so that can look less than pretty. So I always like to make sure that I'm using the right side of my die cut pieces. I'm going to go ahead and tuck this one in here, and now I'm getting the other direction, and I am staggering them just a little bit so that they have some depth to how they stick out on this project. And in fact, I think I could stagger them just a little bit more. Oh, hi Michelle. Michelle made it. Good to see you. Just getting going. We are making an alien inspired landscape today. So we've got some jumbo oversized flowers that we're going to be making and putting them in a little alien scene. So I thought this was a nice alternative. When I did a very princessy project, this will catch any of the younger boys in your life who might enjoy more of an alien scene. So we have our 2 fishbowl dies that we're altering up to create this jumbo flower. I've added my stamen that were the feet from the Dancing Toast die, and I am ready to put these together. So I am flipping this one upside down so that I will get the opposite curve on my flower, so some of that peeks out from behind, and hopefully we can see how that'll peek out. Not so much that these holes show, but just a little bit to give the flower some depth. So I'm going to go ahead. Before I do that, actually, I want to take one of the alien and the spaceship antenna pieces that I cut out of green, and I'm going to add that inside just so it is easier to glue everything together in the end. I'm going to pop it up a little bit, offset it so that it's sticking up just a little bit, so we have that little peak of green up there, and that will be where the flower attaches to the stems. Well, I'm glad you think it looks like fun, Michelle. I am. This one is simpler, which I said in the beginning, but I thought it was cute and fun, and I've had a very busy month so far this month, so I wanted to keep things just a little bit simpler. And so we're playing a lot with the idea of scale and texture. So when we set this smaller spaceship amongst a scene of flowers that look jumbo in comparison, then we're creating a very different scene with our flowers than we would as a bouquet or something. So they do tend to look more alien. I didn't get this up quite as far as I wanted. Is it too late? Because it's on the inside, it is tearing, but nobody's going to see that because it's on the inside. And I do want it up just a little bit farther. Okay. That's just a little better. All right, I am not going to glue everything down to my background just yet because I do want to do some heat embossing on it to add our sentiment there. So I'm going to save this for just a little bit later. I've got a little tray over here for that. I'm also making my vine be spiky, and I'm doing that with these little pieces that are raindrops from the worm set. So I'm going to take all of the stems that I cut, and I'm actually going to cut all of these in half because I want them to be individual stems. And in fact, I'm just going to kind of cut out this curved piece because I just want them to be mostly straight. All right, those ones are mostly straight. That one has a little curve, but I think it'll be fine when we glue it. Those ones, you know, they're looking okay. I didn't have to cut off the actual curve. And then we've got a couple more. I think I had you cut 8 of these all together. And I just like to fit as many things as I can on my die plate. So I will set this with this die on there, and then I'll put one flower over here and one foam cord over here so that I can die cut as much as possible onto my one die cutting plate. All right, I'm going to take these seed pieces and create some spikes on my stem, and I'm going to start with the bigger ones at the top and make them get smaller as I go down. And I think I used 2, 4, 6, about 6 of them, so you should have plenty from the instructions that I gave you to die cut, to use as many as you want, because you'll have a few extras. I think that one is too big. I'm going to use the medium sizes next, and then I'll use the smallest sizes, and these do get a little hard to handle, but we're going to make it work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of bump these as close together as I can get them. And let's see, I think I have a way to zoom. Let me figure out where I put that. There we go. That's a little bit of a zoom. And I'm going to keep pushing these together. Hopefully that helps. Oh, Michelle, you've disassembled your craft room. I haven't finished. You're moving, yay! I remember you saying you were looking at a place, so that's good. Glad it worked out. So you'll have to craft along once you're all set up in your new space. Okay, instead of trying to put glue on all of these teeny tiny pieces, I'm going to put a bunch of glue on the back of my stem. And I'm going to make sure it's nice and coated. And then I know this will kind of squish over the edge. So working on my glass mat, it will be okay. It will dry, and then I'll be able to peel it up off my mat. However, this is right in the center of my mat, so I might want to use, let's see. I keep parchment paper nearby for these kinds of things, so I'm going to grab, I'm going to take off the extra glue with my hand, and I can just wash my hand later. I'm going to let this grab onto those spikes, and let's see, we can get it out just like that. And then I can adjust the spikes if they're peeking out too far on one side or the other of the stem. And then I can set that aside to dry. It'll be a lot more sturdy once it's dry. It is a little wobbly right now. And then I can clean up my glue. All right, what are we going to work on next? We're going to work on these flowers. These kind of remind me of fuchsias, if you know any flowers. And these I'm using, again, that antenna from the spaceship. And then for the stamen on these ones, I used the shoelaces from the roller skate set. So that's what we're gonna do with those. And again, I'm gonna cut these down so that I can use the pieces independently of each other. So I will stack them up in a big pile, and then I don't have to cut each one off individually. And I'm gonna hold them this way, and I'm gonna cut off the U just because I find that to be a little bit easier. And then I can use them individually. So on the back side, we can go ahead and bring in our mat here so we don't have to make a gluey mess. On the back side of each of these, I will put a bead of glue right at the bottom. And then I'm just going to add 3 of these new stamen to each one, with the longest one in the middle and then 2 shorter ones on the side. And these are technically shorter when I cut them apart, but really you can just position them shorter if you don't have them cut shorter. All right, and again, I'm making sure I'm flipping these over as I glue them in place so that I get the clean side of the dies on my finished project. So this one is technically longer. I will glue it down in the middle as long as possible, and then I will put the shorter ones off to the side. And you can experiment with different color schemes. I knew I wanted to go kind of bold and unusual with these, and at first I thought I would make my flower orange and my stamen to be more of the teal, but against the black, I think this color combo popped a little bit more. But if you're not using a black background, or if you go with like a gray background, then you'll have more contrast between the colors, and you'll get that popping of the colors no matter what you choose. So experiment with color combos. It can be fun to try new things. All right, let's get these glued in place. Almost there. So yes, this one again is a lot of die cutting little pieces and a lot of gluing little pieces, but I find creating these very full scenes to be very satisfying in the end, even if it does take a little while. And I'll be honest, I wanted to add more vines, but I was feeling pretty done die cutting by that point, and so I didn't. So I understand if you feel full of die cutting and don't want to do any more, you can adjust it to how much energy you have. All right, so we've got those. Let's go ahead and do our phone cord vines. So when I was die cutting, I didn't die cut the whole thing. I tended to leave the blocky ends of the phone cord, which attach to the phone. I let them cut weird off the side because I don't want those blocky ends anyway. I'm just gonna nip off that stuff. So just like we did with the princess curly hair, we're just using that central piece again. So I'm gonna trim these down. Probably should have trimmed most of them before going on, but I didn't, so real crafting, real time. Okay. Well, Michelle, I'm glad you were able to join me with the schedule change. I have had a bunch of Friday evening things come up with between various stuff, family stuff and other work stuff, and so I wanted this series to be on a regular schedule, and so far that has not quite worked out, but I'm hoping that moving forward we'll be able to keep it to a regular schedule. All right, this is getting there. And then with these ones, I'm going to alternate the way they curve to make them look more vine-like. So if this one curves this way, I'll take my next piece and rotate it upside down so that it curves the other way, and just glue the little end pieces together. Now with some of them, where they connected, I also glued an extra curve to give it more depth and texture. So experiment with how you can glue your curves together to get fun shapes. This one's gonna go this way. And then with this one, I also glued one up here at the top, branching off in the opposite direction. And I think if you mix up the shapes a little bit as you work, it makes it look more organic and less like a repeated phone cord over and over again. So that is why I chose to make sure the shapes were mixed up a little bit. Okay, so those are both going that way. See, I'll make this one go this way. And then I'm gonna just try and work along with the shapes that I have on here because I do like how those came out. So let's see, I think this one went more like that. And then this one, I think I had it going the opposite direction. So I will just adjust it down here. And it's not quite identical to what I did before, but that's okay. The idea is to just play with the shapes to try and get something that feels a little more organic. Okay, so those are done. We can go ahead and glue our stems onto our flowers. When I made this, I did glue the stems down first and then glued the flowers on top. You know, let's go ahead and do it that way because it's just going to be easier. And I will shift to doing my heat embossing now before we start gluing the other pieces on. And that way any warping that we get of our paper cardstock from doing our heat embossing won't translate through the whole card or the other pieces on there. Since we're heat embossing, I don't want to blow all of these pieces away with my heat tool, so I'm going to go ahead and set that stuff aside. One thing we do kind of need to think about is placement. So if I've got these big flowers coming off down here, and then I'm going to have some flower buds coming up to about there, so I'm going to want the placement of my die to be right about there. And if we check to see if our big flower has enough room to dangle, I think we are doing pretty good. So I'm going to go with that. And I am going to use my stamp positioning tool just so I can get a nice coat of ink on this without having to worry about my stamp not getting the correct placement. So I'm going to stick that in my tool. I'm kind of think about if things look straight enough. Straight enough. Okay. So I have got my little embossing tray here. I like to keep all of the parts and pieces together on a tray. I am going to use my powder because white embossing powder on a black background, you can see every single stray grain of embossing powder. So I do want to make sure to use my powder, which I usually forget to do. So I'm glad if it's on my tray, it will help me remember. And I am being careful not to squeeze this stamp too hard because these are not photopolymer stamps. They tend to be very squishy, and if you push too hard, you get the letters to distort. Hi, Lynn. You're not late. I mean, you're on your own schedule, and that's just fine. I'm glad to see you here. And we are creating an alien landscape scene with flowers that are multiple times in size of the alien spaceship. So we've got this out of the world card going on. I'm getting my heat embossed sentiment done before we start gluing everything together. All right, I'm going to get my powder on there. And then we can get this heat embossed. I like to work with these coffee filters because they're super cheap, and if I need to throw one away for any reason, I don't have to worry about it. And they work very nicely to contain the mess. I usually try and keep it on the tray for a further layer of mess containment, but that's just how it's going tonight. All right, I think I am done with that, so let's get that out of the way. I am going to heat emboss this, so I'm glad you think it's cute, Lynn. Thank you. I'm going to take this off camera and try to keep the noise away from the mic as much as possible. I'm curious to know how much of the heat tool you can hear, because it's very loud to me. All right, there we go. So we've got our sentiment on there. I do have a couple of speckles that have strayed here and around my letters. Sometimes, if I can find what I'm looking for, oh, there, it's over here. Sometimes I can use a craft knife to just scrape off those little stray bits. Although I find white on black and the opposite, black on white, are a little harder to clean up. But if you're using something like gold, I find that cleans up a little bit better. This is working out okay. And it's not a lot, but it's enough that I'm noticing it and it's bugging me. So I'll just clean it up while I can. Now, to get the powder off, I like to use a cloth that is just barely damp so that it will pick up the rest of that powder, and then that will all dry after. Should dry just fine. Okay. Tools away. Nope. Do need to leave that out because it's got my stamp on it, so I will set that over here to make sure I put my stamp away later on. And I don't want to glue this onto the card yet because I am going to dangle things off the end, and then we'll trim everything off. So let's go ahead and do a bunch of these leaves because this is going to take a little while to do. So mostly I'm gluing at the bottom, and I am trying to kind of overhang the edges and the bottom just a little bit so that if you see here how this one got really cut off, it looks like the scene keeps going. So I like to make my scenes that way. And then I'm going to, my glue is not wanting to squeeze out. I think when these glue bottles get low on glue, that's when I start experiencing a little bit of challenge. So I might need to move to my other one. Is definitely working. This one has a larger tip on it, so the glue comes out a lot faster. I prefer the fine tip, but I think we're gonna have a little more luck with this one right now. The other reason I like to glue them only at the bottom is that then you can give a little zhuzh of the leaves and let them stand up a little bit more, kind of like that curling ribbon where you run it with the scissors. You can run it with just your fingers and get it to curl upwards. Okay, I'm gonna try and aim these a little bit different direction, overlap them, tuck them behind each other, and I am not even trying to repeat what I did here. I'm just trying to get a good scene going on. So we're gonna put those back there. Let's see, make another shorty one here in the middle. And then, let's see, I don't want the bottom to show any black. I really want to cover that up with the leaves. So I think I'm gonna make this one even shorter. And then this one can sit on top and it still has some variation in height. So I definitely prefer it when it looks now a little bit different from its neighbor. Okay. I think I still want to see that one. All right. And then with the rest of our stems, we're going to just tuck them in here and there to create our little flowers peeking up. And with these, I am going to probably glue them down most of the way, just because these flowers are so tiny that they would not be well supported with these teeny tiny thin stems. And this is where I really do want the fine tip glue bottle. All right. I'm going to zhuzh some of these leaves so that we have places to tuck. Oh, I I just tore that one. Let's glue it in place. Yeah, that's the glue that's not working. Okay, we'll just glue that one back in place and nobody will know. Alright, let's try this again and get these leaves to have some dimension. Okay, what I'm gonna do, since I have this big glue gun, is I'm gonna go with my gluing on the edge trick, where I can dunk in the glue, and that way I am not getting too much glue onto the project. Alright, and I am going to try and mix and match these. I'm going to tuck the ends behind some of the leaves, in front of some of the leaves, going across, wiggling around, so that I have lots of variation in these pieces. And I might even cut off some of these so that they are shorter than some of the other ones, so that they definitely layer up. Some of them might look like they're coming again off from the bottom edge, so it looks like the scene keeps going in that direction as well. So I'm gonna keep these moving. And then I will trim everything off at the very end as we create what looks like a mess of things going about. All right, let's see. I think I want to put several of these flowers in here, since this part has a dip in it and it ended up shorter than the rest of things. Okay. And we can even have some of them come up and nestle around our sentiment. How are we doing? I think I want one more kind of coming off this direction. And I had you cut out a bunch of these, so you can use more or less to your taste. And like I said earlier, not only to your taste, but to your energy level for die cutting. Okay, I think at this point I want to add a few flowers and then reassess how everything is looking. So for this, this big glue tip definitely leaves a lot of glue. For this, I'm going to go ahead and just put a dot of glue on the ends of these stems, and then attach my flower right onto those. I have my flower tray here. So this part goes a little bit faster if you work in a batch like this. And again, these little buds will help glue those stems in place, so they're not lifting and catching on things. They are very delicate, so they can tend to tear. So this one is a little awkward here. I think I'm going to trim it just a little bit more, and then I can put my flower bud right there. This one is lifting up a lot. I'm going to skip that one for the moment and do the ones that are lying flat. I might decide to push that flat. I might decide to trim it. I might decide to try and get it to float in the air. I think I did that one, this one over here. I do have this one floating in the air, so it's possible. It's just not super easy, especially when I'm doing this all live and not being able to take very careful time with it. All right, let's try it. Let's try it. I'm going to put the glue on the back of my flower so it has space to spread around. I'm going to use the back of my hand to get off the excess, and then I'm going to use my tweezers and I'm going to overlap the flower bud till the stem is all the way at the top of the flower, so that it has lots of room to hold on, and I think that's gonna work. Okay, so we got that guy to pop up, which is just fun. I like it when we've got the extra dimension. Do I want more? No, I think I'm okay with that. I think I definitely used fewer than I did here. And in fact, you know, actually I think I do want some of these more foreground flowers, so I will add just a couple more. And I think this glue is probably still wet enough. Oh, I just glued the wrong side. Here, let's try that again. I'll put one there, and then maybe one more over here. And that's mostly why I had you cut a whole bunch of pieces, just so you could decide where you needed to fill in the gaps. So let's get those flower buds on. Nope, my fingers are getting gluey at this point. There we go. I think I like having more of the movement with these smaller flower buds on there. I think it adds a little something extra. All right, I'm just gonna do the elementary school thing of where I just rub the glue off my fingers now that it's dry, and that will clean that up. All right, I am gonna turn this over and give this a nice trim. Just straight across the back. I find a nice big pair of scissors is best for trimming along the edge of things, because that blade will naturally want to flow along the edge of the cardstock. So I don't think I'm going to trim the sides off this time. I think I'm just going to leave them because we have enough of a border that will work. All right, let's go ahead and get our big flowers down. We've got our big dangly guy that needs our big spiky stem. So I want to make sure I get all the spikes onto the project, and I'm going to get some more glue here for these thinner pieces. All right, so I can get my spikes on there. Yeah, Miss Willow's in here and she wants dinner. Michelle said she heard the kitty. Yep, she's over here. She's moving between playing with a piece of paper on the floor and tapping me for food. So I will get her dinner soon enough. All right, let's get that glued into place. I think I'm going to go ahead and use one of my magnets so that I can keep moving. Or two magnets, so I can keep moving with the rest of our flowers. All right, I did cut out different colored stems for the other flowers just because different plants usually have different colored leaves and stems, but feel free to do what you want to do. Especially these ones are rather dark. They match the large leaves down here, and they do kind of blend in with the black background, so maybe you could make a different choice, but I think it's okay for me, and I'm just gonna go with it. And I'm putting these off in odd numbers and definitely staggering the heights of things so that they feel more organic and cohesive. I'm gonna aim them slightly different directions. Now, I could have done another piece of this in green so that the top of the flower would blend in with the stem, but really, these are alien flowers at this point. It doesn't really matter what they look like. So I'll give myself some room over here. I think that glue has set enough that we don't need the magnets anymore. And we'll get these guys. These guys on there. So yeah, this project is going by rather quickly today. We are going to be done in just a minute here, and so we'll have a shorter evening, and you guys can do what you're going to do for the rest of your day. All right, so I've got my little jungly vines. Let's see where I've got the most room. I'm going to put the widest one, I think, this one here. And I still have my glue down here. Again, I did leave these not glued at their bases so that you can zhuzh them up, but if you're worried about them getting stuck, those kinds of things do kind of tend to catch when you're sliding your projects into envelopes. And I had to look it up, but this card size is called A9, and there are A9 envelopes for half letter size mailings. And I did pick up a batch of those envelopes recently for doing some other mailing that I need to do. So there are definitely envelopes that can fit with these size of cards, or if you like to make your own envelopes, you can do that as well. Okay, these things are tighter together, and I feel like I want something else over here. Do I have extra pieces? I did not cut extra pieces of those. I will probably just add that later because I do feel like it's a little out of balance and it could use something over here. But I will do that later. Let's go ahead and do our spaceship. Again, I'm going to make sure I'm working on the back side of the spaceship, and I'm going to glue these little scraps that I had set aside behind those holes so that we have colored lights coming out of our spaceship window. And some of these pieces are definitely too big, so I will trim them down just a little bit. And as long as they don't cover the window next door, then they'll be just fine. So that one fits there. I'm not sure this yellow one is big enough. I did save, I don't think that's big enough. I did save this extra piece just in case. Make sure, make this one big enough to cover my whole window. Now it doesn't matter if it covers up some of that red on the other side once that hole is covered. And then I have the most leeway with this piece to just use it as a big chunk because nobody's gonna see the messy back side. So now we have our cute little lights showing through the window, and I did layer up my pieces with foam tape, and I did cut my 1/2-inch pieces down a little bit so that it would fit nicely behind, or nicely on this skinny belt for the spaceship. And with the Spellbinders dies, they have the etched marks in them to help you line up where these pieces layer on top of each other. So I am going to use that, kind of center that layer, and I will go ahead and layer up my antenna with a foam dot as well. Well, I think when I created my project, I did add a little bit of black marker into the nooks where the pieces tuck together, and that gives a little bit more shadow between those layers to help them look more layered. I forgot to do that with my belly band, but you know what? I think I'm gonna risk it. Oop, and of course I slipped with my marker. I am going to add a little bit of shading there, and I did slip with my marker. I'm just going to leave it like that. I did have ideas on how I could fix that, but I'm just going to let it be imperfect. Okay, and then we can layer on my antenna piece. Oop, that is not straight. Okay, that looks good. Now to get this on my card, I'm going to add, now this is already popped up on the back, so I just need to add my foam behind the base of the spaceship, and then I can add some glue to this piece since it's already popped up. So I've got those different levels going on. Okay, I'm going to put this on here. I did let my edge of the spaceship kind of lean off the base here so that it would overlap the card, and again it just looks a little more natural and organic even though it's alien. Okay, all of that is trimmed and we're ready to mount this to our card. I do have quite a mess going on with all these pieces, but I will get it out of the way and do official cleanup later. Okay, I've got my card base and plenty of glue. This is where the big nozzle comes in handy on this glue press, because you can get lots of glue to make sure you're getting everything adhered down. Okay, I'm just eyeballing where it needs to go to be centered on my scene. And that is pretty good. Okay, this one needs a little bit more glue because it's popping up. That one's okay, that one's okay. All right, there we go. We've got our little alien scene with lots of layers and textures going on. And I just got my, might want to put your spaceship on after so that it doesn't go off the edge of your card, because then it might be hard to fit in an envelope. So there we go. That is our alien spaceship card for today, where we're working with color and scale to create something other than what it was intended to be. All right, I will come back to my face, and that's the one. All right, so I hope you guys had a good time with this project tonight, and if you want to recreate this project and share it, I do have that Facebook group that is fairly quiet over there, but it's getting started, and we'll see how many people we can get sharing their projects over there. That is I'll put it in the description of this video in case you want to find that and join over there. So that will wrap it up for tonight. I am glad to have these cards done, and I had fun with this one. I have more ideas for next month. I haven't settled on one particular one, but I know in the future we're going to be working with some more jumbo size flowers later in the summer, so I hope you guys will stick around for that. You are welcome. You are welcome. I'm glad you guys were here with me tonight and enjoyed the project, and I will see you next time. I'll be back next Wednesday with my Mystery Box Make series, and that will be at 4 p.m. Pacific. If you're interested in a very random crafting session, that one, I don't even know what's going to happen during that one, so maybe you want to join me for that. And I am hoping to have also a pre-recorded video up next week as well, but I have been busy with my new job adventure, and I will do my best to make sure I am here regularly for crafting with you. All right, I see Donna's here. All right, have a great weekend. You guys too, have a great weekend, and I will see you later.